Okay, we are learning how to use the quadratic formula, and all equations must be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So everything has to be to the left and 0 has to be on the right, which number 1 is. So your a is 3, your b is -5, and your c is -8. So all we're going to do is plug into the quadratic formula. So x would equal negative b. Well, since b is already a negative, b is a -5, a -5 is a +5. So we would have 5 plus or minus the square root of, we're going to have -5 squared because it's b squared minus 4 times a times c. And that whole thing is going to be over 2 times a. Okay, we're just going to start simplifying this. And the first thing we're going to do is try to simplify within the radical. So you would have that x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of -5 squared is 25. A -5 times a -5 is a +25. And then I have a -4 times 3 times -8. I have two negatives, so when I multiply two negatives, I end up with a positive. And 4 times 3 is 12, times 8 is 96. And then over 2 times 3 is 6. Let's add 25 and 96, and we end up with 5 plus or minus the square root of 121 over 6. Okay, and at this point, this is where I'm going to do two problems. I am going to do 5 plus the square root of 121 over 6, and 5 minus the square root of 121 over 6. And I'm going to get two different answers. And I'm just going to put that in my calculator. I am going to put 5 plus the square root of 121, and then hit enter, and then divide by 6. If you don't hit enter, you might just be dividing part of it by 6. You want to divide the whole thing by 6. So I'm going to divide by 6 after I hit enter, and I get 2.666 repeating. So one of my answers is 2.66, I'll just leave it at 7, 2.667. And the other answer, I'm going to do 5 minus the square root of 121 in my calculator, then hit enter, then divide by 6, and I get -1. So my two answers are 2.666 repeating and -1. And when you're doing the quadratic formula, you can leave your answers as decimals or fractions, it doesn't matter. -2.666 repeating as a fraction is 8/3, so 8/3, comma -1 would be acceptable on this also. All right, let's do the next one. All right, on number 2, this is already set up in ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So my a is 10, my b is -9, and my c is 6. So go ahead and set up your quadratic formula, plug in numbers, and let's see if we match. All right, I ended up with x equals 9, and it is a +9 because the formula says -b. Well, if your b is already a negative is always a positive. So 9 plus or minus the square root of -9 squared minus 4 times 10 times 6, all over 2 times 10. So let's simplify inside that radical, and let's see if you get the same thing that I get. Let me pause here and give you a chance to do this, and we'll match answers. Okay, I ended up with x equals 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 minus 240 over 20. And if we subtract 81 minus 240, we end up with -159. So I would have 9 plus or minus the square root of -159 over 20. So I automatically know that I'm going to have an imaginary or a complex answer. So all I need to do now, and I'm going to let you leave your answer as a fraction, all you need to do is figure out what the square root of 159 is. So we're going to do that in our calculator. And I get 12.609. So my answer, I'm going to leave it like this. X equals 9 plus or minus 12.609, and since it was negative 159, the square root of a negative is always an imaginary number, so I'm going to put an I there, over 20, and you can just leave your answer just like this, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to do any more. There are two solutions there. There's 9 plus 12.609i divided by 20 and 9 minus 12.609i divided by 20. So that is a perfectly acceptable answer. Let's go on to number 3. Okay, number 3 is also already an ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So my a is 6, my b is negative 12, and my c is 1. So I am going to plug those into my formula. Go ahead and do that, and let's see if we get the same answer. Okay, I got x equals 12 plus or minus the square root of negative 12 squared minus 4 times 6 times 1. All over 2 times 6. Again, when you do negative b and b is already a negative, it makes it a positive. All right, let's simplify inside our radical and compare answers. Okay, I got 12 plus or minus the square root of 144 minus 24 over 12. And if we simplify even further inside our radical, we would end up with 12 plus or minus the square root of 120 over 12. At this point, we're going to do two separate problems. We're going to do that x equals 12 plus the square root of 120 over 12 and get that answer. And then x equals 12 minus the square root of 120 over 12 and get that answer. And those are going to be my two solutions. So let's go ahead and do that in your calculator. Remember, you do 12 plus the square root of 120. You hit enter and then divide by 12. Don't do it all in one step. And on the first one, I got 1.912. Then I'm going to do that for the next one. I'm going to do 12 minus the square root of 120, hit enter, and then divide by 12. And I get 0.087. So my solutions are 1.912 and 0.087, and it does not matter what order you write your answers in. Either order is fine. You could do the 0.087 first if you wanted to. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, on number 4, it's also in ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So your a is 2, your b is 5, and your c is negative 9. So let's plug those numbers into our quadratic formula and see if we get the same thing. So go ahead and do that. Okay, when I plugged my numbers in, I got x equals negative 5. This time the b is negative because in the equation it's positive, so when you put a negative in front of it, it makes it negative. So negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 9 all over 2 times 2. Let's simplify and see if we match. Okay, I went and simplified it even further, and I went ahead and added what I got together in the radical sign, so I ended up with negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 97 over 4. And if you got that, then we match. If not, I'll pause and you can ask me questions. But at this point, this is where we do two different problems. We do 5 plus the square root of 97 over 4, and 5 minus the square root of 97 over 4. So we're going to put that in our calculator. 5 plus the square root of 97, hit enter, then divide by 4. And I get 3.712. So one of my answers is 3.712. And then I'm going to do 5 minus the square root of 97, hit enter, then divide by 4. And I get negative 0.212, negative 1.212. And those are my two solutions for this equation. All right, let's look at the next one. Okay, if you'll notice on number 5, this one is not equal to 0. If it is not equal to 0, then you can't do it yet. I need to take this negative 3 and move it over to this side. So when I move it over here, it's going to become a positive 3. And so what I have to do is add that to the 9. So I'm going to get 6x squared plus 2x plus 12 equals 0. Please stop me and ask me questions if you don't understand where I got that from. Once you get that, then it's in ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So here's your a, here's your b, here's your c. Go ahead and plug those numbers into your formula. Okay, I got x equals -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 6 times 12 all over 2 times 6. Let's simplify as far as we can and see if we match. Okay, I ended up with -2 plus or minus the square root of -284 over 12. Please stop me if you didn't get that or you have questions about that. But at this point, I realize I'm not going to have any real solutions because of my negative under my square root sign. So I am going to go ahead and find the square root of 284, which is 16.852. So my answer, I'm going to accept this as your answer, -2 plus or minus 16.852 I, because it was the square root of a negative number, so we have an I there, over 12. And if you leave your answer like that, I'll accept that. That would be perfectly fine. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, I actually want to skip number 4 because number 6 because it was just like number 5, and I want to go on to number 7. On number 7, you notice that you have 3x squared equals -7x plus 136. So I am going to take that -7x, move it over there, and I'm going to take the positive 136 and move it over there. So I'm going to move them both over there. When you move them to the other side, they always become opposite what they were. So this is now going to become 3x squared plus 7x minus 136 equals 0. If you move everything away from the right side, you have 0 left over there. So my a is 3, b is 7, and c is -136. Let's plug those numbers into our quadratic equation. Okay, I got x equals -7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times -136 all over 2 times 3. Please stop me if you didn't get that or you need clarification on how I got that. And then let's simplify this as far as we can and compare answers. After simplifying, I ended up with -7 plus or minus the square root of 1681 over 6. And let's go ahead and do this. We're going to do two problems. So we're going to have -7 plus the square root of 1681 over 6 and see what that equals. If I do -7 plus the square root of 1681 and hit enter and then divide by 6, I get 5.6 repeating. So we'll just say 667. I don't like to say 666. The other one will be -7 minus the square root of 1681 over 6. So if I put -7 minus the square root of 1681 in my calculator, hit enter, and then divide by 6, I get -8. So my solutions are x equals 5.667 and -8. And you can leave the 5.667 as a fraction if you would like to. All right. Okay, let's just do one more. I think we'll get the idea after we do this last one. Again, you have to make it equal to 0. It has to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that -2x needs to be moved over here. When you move it over to the other side, it will become positive. So I'll have 6x squared plus 2x plus 3 equals 0. So there's my a, my b, and my c. Let's plug those into the quadratic formula. Okay, here is what I've got. If you don't have that, stop me and we'll talk about it. If you do have it, let's go ahead and simplify and see what you get, and then we'll compare answers. Okay, I have -2 plus or minus the square root of -68 over 12, so you can tell you're going to have imaginary answers. So let's go ahead and see what we get, and we'll compare again. For my answer, I got x equals -2 plus or minus 8.246i over 12. It's okay for you to leave it as a fraction. Don't forget that I at the end. If you didn't get this, let me know, but otherwise, that is the answer.